Hey Bart, we are here at Crash Talks. So, what is Crash Talks? It is not like any other podcast, and in any other podcast, we talked about multiple things, but just assume that you're a developer. You don't want to go through the whole long hour of video. You just want a little bit of content from them, which will be like a crash course for you. So, that's why I've named it Crash Talks. So, I'm welcoming you, Bart. I'm Harshvardhan. Up here with me is Bart Farrell. So, Bart, please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bart. I'm originally from the United States, but I've been living in Spain for the last 12 years. And I do a lot of content creation and community work in the cloud native ecosystem. Yeah, very good to be here.
So, Bart, could you please guide us through the wave of that cloud native? So for the beginners like me, the noobs like me, could get into that zone of cloud native. So, can we start with a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, this is kind of an age thing, right? So I'm older than probably a lot of people in your audience, and so the idea of cloud native, meaning as it sounds, native to the cloud, right? So in order for these technologies to sort of be more visible and easier to learn, there's a foundation that's called the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and as you mentioned earlier, I'm an ambassador there. And so what the whole idea of this is technologies that are being used in the cloud, and to avoid what's called vendor lock-in. All right, so vendor lock-in meaning that you can only work with, let's say you use Amazon, AWS, you use Google, you use GCP, or you use Microsoft Azure. So using AKS. So the idea behind cloud native technologies is allowing people to have the freedom to use the technologies that work best for them. And in the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the technologies we work with are open source. And so for people who want to get experience, it's a great place to do so, because you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have any experience whatsoever. You just have to be nice. You have to be enthusiastic and ready to learn.
Okay, that's cool. So, are cloud native and DevOps a lot similar things?
DevOps practitioners will be using cloud native technologies. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the idea behind dev and ops is that normally you'd have development in one silo, so front end and back end developers working together, and then operations working in another silo in another separate space, and that there'd be a lack of cooperation between the two of them. And so the idea then over time would be merging those two, bringing them closer together, so that it's not that, oh, I developed something and then the sort of stereotype, you throw it over the wall to the operations team once you actually want to have it go into deployment, once you want it to be deployed and to go into production. So like I said, that's more of like a way of working. Cloud native is just sort of a, and there is cloud native is more, like I said, DevOps people can say sometimes is a philosophy or way of working. And then if we have, if we look at other new paradigms such as, platform engineering, but if we're talking about cloud native technologies or cloud native computing, we're generally thinking about open source. And so, DevOps can be done with technologies that are not open source, right? Cloud native means working with containers. So when we're talking about containers, containerization, that's also where Kubernetes comes in. If we're talking about microservices, that's also part of the cloud native framework, and also a service mesh. Service mesh is another thing that's going to be in there. So like I said, cloud native, it's a way of looking at a certain set of technologies. DevOps involves a certain set of practices that will often be related to talking about things like continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery. These are things that are going to be featured there. So someone could say they're a DevOps engineer. They could say they're a cloud native engineer, but it's more likely that you'd see DevOps. Like I said, cloud native more refers to the technologies themselves, whereas DevOps is the way in which someone is going to be working.
Okay, that's cool. As a undergrad, CI/CD is a lot hectic thing for me. Does a beginner like me, for example, I'm a beginner as a DevOps engineer or anything, is it beginner friendly, or do I have to a lot experience?
Good question. So it's as simple as this. Take whatever technologies that you worked with and go into Google and type in, let's say for databases, let's say you use Postgres. So if you go to Google and you type Postgres, CNCF or Postgres Cloud Native, you'll probably start finding all kinds of GitHub repos, all kinds of different open source projects that are working with those things. So what I always ask people is like, based on your experience, what makes the best next step for you? And with that in mind, then it's just a question of looking at the different projects that are available. What I really want to insist here that I've said time and time again, I actually need to make this into a proper video, is the biggest problem that people have is being in a hurry. And so if you expect to learn all this stuff really, really quickly, that's going to be complicated. But luckily, there are resources from the CNCF, like the Cloud Native, the CNCF glossary that explains, key terms that are in the Cloud Native ecosystem that anyone who's going to want to be a part of it is going to need to learn. Like I said, those are the things you need to look at. Are you going to learn Kubernetes in a week? No. Are you going to learn it in a month? No. Are you going to learn it in 6 months? I don't know. What does it mean to learn Kubernetes? But what I'm saying is that these things do take time. So it's not like there's just no need to be in a rush. And also the best part about learning these things is having access to a global community of literally hundreds of thousands of people, because after Linux, Kubernetes is the biggest open source project in history. So with that in mind, is enjoying the process and enjoying being a part of a global initiative. That's really where the magic comes in. So like the technological stuff, if you're doing the good community work and if you're being an active participant, then everything else is going to come naturally. I say this because I've had interns who had very little experience and are now working for cloud native companies that are CNCF ambassadors, that are doing lots of really good things in the areas where they live. And these are people that don't have 20 years experience. So I really want people to understand that it's more about how you approach it than the technologies themselves. And really just understanding that it's a question of time. And if you put in the work, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, for sure. The great contributions we make, we get it back sooner or later. Uh, Bart, I just wanted to ask one thing. Like, what motivated you in that time when you entered in this zone of cloud native? Like, the story would motivate a lot of us. So I really want to know about that story of yours entering into this zone. Because I think in your past you might also be a web developer, front-end developer, or have done into some those other things might have tried, or you have directly hopped into making this community. I really want to know part of your story.
Very good question. So in terms of my story, I basically got started in tech 9 years ago, 8 years ago, working for a British tech company that had a software development center here in Bilbao in the north of Spain where I live. And so I got started there as a talent manager, organizing events, doing internal initiatives related to trainings and things like that. But I always tell people I've never written a line of code in my life, and I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. But there are so many ways to be involved in this ecosystem that it's not just writing code. Obviously, that's a very strong area. But there are lots of other things that people can do, whether it's through documentation, whether it's helping out with content creation. There are many, many different things that people can do in order to contribute. So in my case, I worked for that company for 3 years. And then I started working as a freelancer about 6 years ago, doing what I did for that company, but for other companies, and then getting into audiovisual production. So pretty much on the side of videos. Then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, everything switched to online. And so it was in 2020 that I got started in the Data on Kubernetes community. And I was there for about 2.5 years. Almost 3 years, and almost 3 years. And so when I was there, I did over 200 live streams, interviewing people from all over the world about their experience working with Kubernetes. And so I learned a lot through that process. And so, yeah, built out a pretty extensive network there. And then, once travel restrictions started improving, organizing in-person events, things of that nature, continuing with the content creation side of videos, podcasts, organizing and hosting events. So that's been my sort of journey. I applied to be a CNCF ambassador first in 2020. I didn't get in. I applied to get in 2021 and I did get in. And I've been an ambassador since then. And I really like that part of what I do because it's a lot of fun. Like I said, very much focused on interacting with people and helping other people meet each other. So yeah, that's kind of been my experience and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah. Looks like the life has gone a little busy for you, but it has gone a little fun too. So, Bart, just tell me one thing. If someone who is new, what things he should continue to learn to go into cloud native? For example, learning Kubernetes, learning Docker, and all these things, like the pathway for that. Just a simpler one, not too complicated or complex.
Yeah, I would say get involved
Just an
in
overview.
yeah, I would say just get involved in an open source project. Go and look at all the different open source projects that are in the CNCF. Find an area that you find interesting, and all of them have great documentation for beginners about how to get started, and they will have good first issues for people that are beginners. So issues that aren't that difficult. Maybe it's checking for typographical errors or doing something that's not necessarily really technical. And if you go to meetings and if you ask questions, but like I said, also please read the documentation. And I will repeat that. Please read the documentation. A lot of the answers will be in there. But if you find things that aren't in the documentation, you have questions about it, getting those questions out in the open, that's a great contribution, because if you have those questions, somebody else probably will too. So I would say that is so that the technical stuff that you're learning, you can apply it directly in an open source project where you're also interacting with other people who have a common interest and will be excited about helping you grow. So I would say that no matter what you decide to do, and maybe you decide to do something that's not in the cloud native ecosystem, and that's fine too. But really don't just sit watching tutorials and doing stuff on your own. Try to make it a process where you're sharing your knowledge and doing it with other people.
Okay.
There's
So for
not
the
the thing is a
viewers
lot of people
who are
want to know
somewhat
like
affordable.
what's the magic secret to learning something quicker than I should probably be able to. There is no magic secret. Like if there was, everybody would be doing it. So like I said, these things take
Yeah.
time. It takes consistency. You're not going to get everything right on the first time, and that's fine. That's called life. It's not a big deal. It's nothing personal. It's just how everything works. No one learns how to speak like I want to learn how to speak French in 2 weeks. Probably not going to work. If we all know, because we all speak different languages, like how long does it take to learn another language? It takes time. Like, and it means making mistakes, and it means consuming lots of material, and it means being corrected. This is no different. So if you approach it with that mindset, don't suffer so much and don't get angry at yourself if you don't get, insane results in a short period of time. All this stuff means showing up, being involved, paying it forward, asking questions, and like I said, just being a good community citizen. Those are the things that work.
Your opinions on no-code contribution could a little simplify because I have seen your previous podcast upon that. So, but I wanted to like know a little bit more, like, okay, the documentation part and all. So we can do that, but can you please brief it a little, like what else other things we can do as a no-code contribution?
Yep. So non-code contributions can mean getting the word out on social media. Open source projects are only successful as they are visible. So if it's not visible, how can people know about it, know what's happening? So being able to give, credit and recognition through social media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, wherever people are, about the things that are going, about new features, about a new release, things like that. Those things are also really, really helpful. Creating content. Not everybody wants to edit a video. Not everybody wants to edit a podcast. Not everybody can make nice graphics that can be used. So like I said, there are tons of different skills. Basically, the question is that you need to ask yourself is, what am I good at? And then the next question is, how can I apply that to this particular open source project? Everybody has something to offer. So like, don't feel like you can only do one thing or another. It's more just about asking, what am I good at? And then how can I make that fit based on the needs that this project has? And maybe that project already has those needs covered. Maybe they have a graphic designer or a social media person, whatever. So it means that it may not be necessary to get involved with it right then. Find another project where your skills will be more needed, and then it's going to make more sense.
Okay. So the last technical question I'm going to ask you is how to be a CNCF ambassador.
Well, you go to cncf.io/people/ambassadors, and you'll see all the information from the CNCF where they have different, where you can see where all the ambassadors are, and they have all the information you could possibly want about the application process. And so they explain the responsibilities, the requirements. Generally speaking, you are a maintainer. All right. So if someone's a maintainer of an open source project, it doesn't mean they have to be. someone it organizes community groups, so some kind of CNCF community group, meetup group in their city, and generally for a longer period of time. All right, when I say that, meaning at least 6 months, and I can't say at least one thing or another, but you have to understand these things take time. Participating in a Kubernetes community days in terms of organizing there, and then also, another way is through content creation. So like I said, there are more specifics on the CNCF website. The best way to look at it is to do it through that. In my case, because of leading communities and creating lots of content that's related to Kubernetes, remember I did 200 live streams in less than 2 years. So that's the way that I was contributing, and why I became an ambassador. But other people come at it from different angles. So once again, it really is, but expecting that just because you apply, you're going to get in, it doesn't work that way. You need to make it easy for the CNCF to be like, oh, of course, this person's been very active contributing to these projects. They've been hosting a meetup in their city for a year. They've spoken at KubeCon or whatever, or their KCD. These are the kind of things, if you make yourself visible, there will be natural consequences. I will also say that there are many other ways to be involved. You don't have to be an ambassador, all right? It doesn't mean that you won't be successful if you don't become an ambassador. It's fine. There are tons of different ways to contribute. And if you don't want to do something like that, that's totally okay. I would just recommend checking out the website, seeing the requirements that are listed there. If you want, find local ambassadors that are in your area and talk to them to see, what kind of, or see this kind of stuff that they're doing, to see, okay, this is a person who I trust, who I look up to. And maybe in the future, I would also like to do that so I can ask them for advice. But like I said, it's quite clearly, the CNCF's done a good job of making this clearer and clearer. In terms of the next application dates, they're open until March 10th. So if people want to apply, they should apply soon. But anyway, yeah, that's my answer to that. Check out the CNCF website, but mostly it's about what are you offering. We don't get paid to be ambassadors. It's really important to know that as well. We're not doing this for the money. It's about paying it forward, about trying to make the community stronger.
Are there myths in somewhere that it is paid?
No, yeah, some people think that, or lots of different, or lots of different misunderstandings, but whatever, that's okay. What we get, some ambassador swag and stuff like that, but we are not paid to be ambassadors. We do not pay to be ambassadors. It's all volunteer based. Same thing with Kubernetes community days, all that kind of stuff.
Yep, if contributions could have made millions, then there would be phenomenal things happening in the community which are booming right now. So, yep, as you heard, about the CNCF Ambassador program. So Bart explained it very well. So now, Bart, the last question for the day for us. Your journey about hip hop, because I have seen your posts, I've seen your feed. It is full of those good content about hip hop. And damn, man, you're such an artist. I really appreciate your work. And please explain your journey a little bit summarily.
So since I was a child, I've always been attracted to hip hop, and I've thought about this a lot in terms of when I first started listening to it, but probably by the age of 3. And so it's something that's always attracted me in terms of the combination of the rhythm and then also the spoken word aspect in terms of writing lyrics. So yeah. And then I started playing piano when I was 8. I started playing drums when I was 12. I started playing guitar when I was 18. But all the while, from an early age, I was really attracted to writing poetry. So I did that through primary school, and then also through high school, and then also somewhat in university. But I was mostly playing guitar, bass, and drums in rock bands. So with that in mind, I'd always been attracted to hip hop, and I really wanted to start making my own beats. I had friends that were rappers. I had friends that made their own beats, and I wanted to start doing it. So about 7 years ago, I started doing that on my own. And then when I got involved in the Data on Kubernetes community, I knew that we were going to need a way to stand out in a different way, because there was a lot of content coming out. Remember, this is 2020, days of the pandemic. So tons and tons of stuff that was, coming out, and it was important to be able to have our own unique brand. So I decided that I would start writing raps for each one of the guests that we had in the live streams. And so that meant, talking about distributed systems, NoSQL databases, stuff like that, rhyming. And this is all before ChatGPT, and I would never use ChatGPT to create rhymes. But it was a unique way for me as a non-technical person to take technical concepts and present them in a fun way. And so I was like, well, people may not be interested if they just see, the title or that something's happening, but if they see that someone's rapping about it, it's certainly unique, right? So they're all on YouTube. I created a lot of rap videos for the Data on Kubernetes community. And then I started doing it for other communities, other companies, other events. And it's something that I really enjoy because it's a way that I get to do something that I really like. That's also as a way to say thanks or to give respect to people for the work that they've done. And yeah, so that's kind of my hip hop journey. I don't know if I'll ever record an album or anything like that, but it's something that I have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, that was really cool. In the time of pandemic, actually, what happened up here in the Indian hip hop scene, a beef started. So we were unfamiliar about that before because I have heard a lot of songs of Eminem, but had never heard Phil Shot. I don't know why that never came into my playlist. I don't know why. I never heard of it. Then I came to know, okay, we can diss each other via the help of rhyming. And I was not a rapper at that time. Then I used to write poems. Then I started rhyming those words, making 2 syllables, 3 syllable rhymes. Then I saw like, okay, someone is producing their beats themselves. And I was amazed. I have never ever touched the guitar in my life. And I was working on a dog which was FL Studio, and it was it was downloaded from Get into PC. I would not explain much to you. So what happened was I was like strumming the beats. I like okay, something is going on. Doom jam, doom jam. Somehow I started making phenomenal beats that was literally sounding awesome, and like I did that a lot. But when I came into engineering, when I deep and dive into tech, I really forgot that part of my life. But we'll definitely look forward to collab with you, Bart. We'll send you my amazing bits. Just try to like rhyme or collab onto it.
Sounds good. No, the whole
Yep.
thing is that whether it's open source or with music, you got to start somewhere, and the music that you're putting out in the beginning will have nothing to do with what you're doing later. I mean, if I had to look at the first things that I wrote in terms of like rhyming or poetry or rap, whatever you want to call it, when I was, I don't know, 11 years old, if I looked at them now, it's like, oh, that's terrible. But I mean, of course, because I had no idea what I was doing. It was just the beginning. And so it's the same thing with everything. Like, if you interact with people that are better than you, if you start, actually analyzing, like you said, like, the amount of syllables, it's really tricky. And I think until you actually do it, you don't realize how hard it is. About like, okay, I want to say all these things, but I only have so much oxygen and so much time. So how am I going to balance those three things without collapsing? It's a very good exercise for discipline, and it doesn't mean that you need to become famous. The objective should never be that. The objective should be to have fun and to feel like you're expressing yourself. And that's what I find really rewarding about it. And so, yeah, that's really cool, though. Definitely send me your beats.
Yep. So that's all for this video. Thanks a lot, Bart. Hope you enjoyed up here.
I did.
So thanks, thanks a lot. Closing it right.
And hope to see you in India this year for KubeCon India.
Are you coming to India? Oh, really? Are you coming?
I can't guarantee it yet, but I would certainly like to if I can.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be looking and meeting you up there in the KubeCon India. So hoping soon we meet.